Welcome back to another Chef Knives to Go quick look product review. I'm Steve Gamache, and what we're looking at is the Okeya Shitogami or white number 2 Hairline Gyuto 210mm knife. So this line of knives uses a core steel of Shitogami or white paper number 2 reactive high carbon steel from Hitachi. He treats a rather conservative 60 Rockwell on that, so that adds a little bit of forgiveness to the equation. The construction is 3 layers, so on each side of that harder core steel you've got a soft iron cladding. Both the cladding and the core steel are reactive, so there's no stainless or semi-stainless or anything on this blade. They do typically come with a lacquer finish on it, so if you start using it and notice that you're not getting much patina, or you start seeing some wear on the surface on the edge where you're starting to cut stuff, that's just the food-safe lacquer. You can let it roll and build the patina gradually as the lacquer wears off, or you can get some acetone and just strip the lacquer off all the time, all at once, and then just start your patina however you want to do it. But I do believe these usually have lacquer on them on the surface. Part of that equation is the out-of-the-box edges aren't the greatest on these. They're decent, but there can be lacquer on the edge as well. So I would recommend, I'd say this is maybe a 4 out of 10. These really do benefit from a finish sharpening, so before you use them to get the maximum out of them. So if you don't sharpen, I'd recommend paying for the Chef Knives to Go finish sharpening service, and that'll show you and just give you a great reference point as to just how sharp this knife can get, and also what kind of edge retention you would get on a good, clean, well-defined edge on this. So 2 great things or benefits of getting that finish sharpened from Chef Knives to Go. So let's take a look at the weight on the knife is 124 grams or 4.4 ounces. And these weights and dimensions will vary just a little bit from knife to knife as they are handmade. This is light and flickable. The edge length is about 210 millimeters right on the money, about 8¼ inches. Overall length on this one's about 350 millimeter. As I said, they're pretty thin, so this is just under 2 millimeters coming out of the handle. About halfway down, it's about 2 millimeters. And then it doesn't have a lot of taper, so it pretty much just keeps around 2-ish millimeters. And then you can see it taper off with the grind. So the grind kicks in here where this faux, like sandblast Kasumi finishes, and you can see it gets pretty thin at the very tip. And it's also fairly thin at the edge, so this is a pretty good, at least I tested the Bunka from this line. It was a really pretty respectable performing knife, especially at the tip, so I'm hoping this one would do just as well. The blade height, about 45 millimeters, so it's not super tall, but as long as you don't have really big fingers and real thick fingers, it should give you plenty of board clearance if you use a decent pinch grip or even racket grip and just keep your fingers tucked up for maximum clearance. Handle's very, very light. It's their kind of basic hoe wood, oval, ambidextrous hoe wood with black plastic ferrule. This ferrule's like a collar that slips over there, so you've always got a little bit of a step there between the wood and the plastic where the ferrule kicks in. They've sealed these nicely where the tang comes in with some kind of rubberized or epoxy or some kind of sealant, and so that's a nice job there on that. Let's take a close-up look at the blade. So the hairline finish typically means it's got a brushed finish with the finish strokes going horizontally or longitudinally with the blade instead of vertically from spine to the edge. So that's a cool aesthetic. Plus, if you clean and wipe the blade, you're typically doing this with your cleaning process and drying process. And so scratches develop. They develop this way and go with the finish and helps hide those scratches. So it's a cool effect of that. A little byproduct of that. This does have hand chiseled kanji, very nicely done, especially at this price point. That's a nice little cool added feature. You've got a kind of a sandblasted Kasumi finish. This is pretty much where the blade road kicks in, or where the grind kicks in, pretty much where that finish changes over. And then you can see the core steel peeking out, and then you can also see the edge bevel there, the shiny part. Here is, again, a look at the spine. Fit and finish is really pretty nice on these. They've relieved the spine just a little bit on the corners, and the choil here in the curve into the neck has got some relief on it. It's not polished much or anything, but they've relieved it, knocked it down pretty significantly, and it's quite comfortable. Out of the box, as I already mentioned, is not great on these, so you want to sharpen them or have them sharpened. The balance point, that light handle, kind of comes in handy to keep the balance point there near your pinch grip. So that's where this particular one is, and my pinch grip is pretty darn close to that, maybe just a touch behind it, but that gives us a neutral, nimble feel. So this thing is a nice lightweight knife. Let's look at the cutting board profile. So here's what it looks like. It's not particularly flat, so it's got a bit of a curve to it. There's a little back belly by the chin or the back of the heel. So it kind of flows into that and then steps to the heel. You've got a fairly low tip on it, so we got a gentle curve to the belly towards the front half of the blade. And I can get about right in there before I start digging the tip into the cutting board with this particular knife. That can vary from knife to knife depending on how they work the profile and what they do with the tip grind, especially where they sharpen it. But so it rolls pretty smooth and a little bit of a flat at the heel, so it should work pretty good for a variety of techniques. So it's a pretty neat little knife line, easy to sharpen. Shitogami number 2 steel at a competitive price for the features that you get, so it's a pretty neat knife line. So there you have the Okeya Shitogami number 2 Hairline Gyuto 210mm knife.